This session was not in the initial schedule, but it was an integral part of previous courses, and we thought how we construct course this year, and finally decided to return it here. And what I would like to talk about are data and indicators for sustainable human development. And I start with one saying was on the table of one economist: in God we trust, all others must be data. Why data are important? Because without data, you are coming to very broad philosophical discussion, and what we would like to do, we would like to have something practical. You could endlessly discuss about words, about notions, and so on, but unless you start bringing in data, you cannot have really good results. And I'd like to start with one simple question. How do you like sunny Budapest? Sunny.
Nice.
Is it hot? Is it warm?
The whole experience was better than last week.
Okay, better than last week. Good saying. This week we had the rain, right? On Monday? Okay, what is this? How it's related to the temperature? Good. And what is this? And how it's related to the temperature? Okay. When we are talking about temperature, what is a physical phenomenon of temperature? Do you know? How, for instance, thermodynamics refers to temperature. What is temperature from thermodynamics point of view?
For example, if there is an ice, it will melt.
Sorry?
For example, if there is an ice, it will melt.
Not exactly. That's about aggregate state of the matter. And there are special diagrams which say you that under certain temperature and certain pressure, this water will be in this state. But that's not exactly this. According to thermodynamics, temperature refers to internal energy of something, right? So if you have more internal energy, your molecules move faster, temperature is higher. Then you have less internal energy, molecules move slower, temperature is lower. At absolute zero, there is no movement of molecules. Clear? But how we end up with measuring temperature with a ruler? Basically, when you look on the thermometer on the wall, you measure temperature with a ruler. It's higher or lower, it's maybe different grade, but it's measuring temperature in centimeters. How you measure energy in centimeters?
Because the matter expands when it is hotter.
Exactly. Basically, what we are using when we measuring temperature in centimeters, we are using proxy. We know that with higher pressure, with higher temperature, matter expands. With lower temperature, matter shrinks. And it very much depends what kind of matter you take. If it's solid matter, it's one extent. If it's not solid matter, it's completely another way. So basically, when matter expands or shrinks, we could catch the energy, right? But will it hold true for all range of temperatures? What kind of liquid we are using in normal thermometers? Sorry?
Mercury.
Okay, mercury, and typically it's water and spirit mixed. So if it's behind 100 degrees, it's go to vapor state. If it's low 100 degrees, if it's lower zero for water, if it's lower certain temperature for mercury, it becomes solid and we cannot measure. So this proxy, this thermometer with this scale, will work only in certain range of temperatures. You could catch this phenomenon of temperature by this thermometer only in certain temperatures. But what happens if the thermometer show you plus 30 degrees? Is it hot or is it not hot?
It's relative.
Sorry?
It's relative.
Yes, exactly. If it's plus 30 degrees in Antarctica, it's hell on the earth. But if it's 30 degrees in Sahara Desert, it's kind of cool day. Right? So we are coming to the next part. When we measure something, when we get raw data, temperature is plus 30, we should change it to indicator. And we should put it into context. Is it big? Is it small? Is it growing? Is it declining? What is share? And so on and so forth. And third part is umbrella. When you know the temperature is plus 20 degrees and atmosphere pressure is this or that, you have certain forecast. If its forecast says it will be raining, most probably you will take umbrella, right? But you could have forecast that it will be raining, but you take no umbrella. And that's this famous story about Einstein, who was asked, he came to some place and somebody found out that his hair is completely wet because he got under the rain. And he was asked, why didn't you put your hat on? And he told, guys, that's obvious. Hat getting dry much longer than hair. I did it intentionally. So starting from phenomena, you should think about how to measure it, then how to evaluate it, and the last thing comes, how to act on it. So we will do it more visual. That's phenomena. That's movement of molecules, which really represent physical essence of temperature. But when we try to measure it, we use certain proxy. Right? In this case, it's tube with some liquid and graduated ruler attached to it. Then, when you measure it, you have to evaluate it, to put it in certain context. And then you put it. On each step, you have some important things. On first step, from phenomenon to measurement, you should understand that each indicator is a proxy. In very rare cases, we could measure things directly, and typically things we are measuring directly are dull and boring. It's like height of pupils. Okay, height of pupils you could measure with rule. Weight of hamburger. Okay, you could weigh it. But these typically don't represent complex phenomena we are interested in. When we move from measurement to evaluation, we put this information into context, and previous knowledge is also quite important. You know that if pressure is this or that, most probably it will be raining. If you know that pressure is this or that, you know that most probably it will be very dry. And then, when you come from evaluation to action, you should take into account opportunity costs. What is the cost of doing, cost and benefit of doing this scenario, of doing that scenario? And that's exactly Einstein's non-desire to put hat on. Because yes, from one point of view, if you put your hat on, you will not get dry. But according to him, it's much more important to get, you won't get wet. But according to him, it was much more important to get dry faster than not to get wet. Then you have a bus which is circulated through distant villages once a day. It could have enormous economic cost because you have to run the bus, you have to maintain it, most probably it will be 1, 2, 3 people who are using it, but it have huge social benefit because it connects distant villages and reduce social exclusion. People could get to the concert, to the hospital. Now, how to do indicators rightly? And here again comes our friend Einstein and say, I want you to be smart. Do you know what is to be smart? Okay. First, it shall be specific. You should clearly say what this indicator means. It should not be broad concept like social exclusion. You should narrow it down to something very specific. When you narrow down something broad to something very specific, you typically lose part of this phenomenon, right? So if you look just on economic cost of running this bus, which could be very specific, how much the bus costs. You lose broader context. And that's why what we typically are doing, and that's ever-going debate between researchers and practitioners. You know this old joke that, it's actually not joke, it's a real story, when one president of the United States exclaimed, please give me one-hand economist, because these bloody guys always fail. On one hand this, on another hand, I want one-hand economist. You should have a broad set of things which are looking on complex phenomena from different angles. On the other hand, to take decisions, to take actions, you could have a limited set of indicators, because otherwise it will be a huge dashboard blinking all colors. Usually measurable. You should be able to measure something, right? So you should somehow convert what is going on, all these bouncing molecules, you should convert into some figure. Ideally, it should be monotonous, and you should know what is good for that. But on first instance, you should measure, convert to something. Third is achievable, because this is coming more from strategic planning. This point is less relevant for measurement, but it's very important for strategic planning. And there was one very good story about mice who live in the forest. And they are weak and powerless, and everybody could harm them, and they decided we should do something about it. And then they go to wise old and ask him, wise old, we are so small, we are so powerless, and everybody hurts us, and we have to hide under the trees to avoid death and so on. What can we do? Wise old look on them and thought, you should become powerful and strong. And they get excited, they went back, somewhere on the road, okay, by the way, how we could do it? And then turned to him and asked, wise old, what we should do to become powerful and strong. And so, I gave you strategy, something is not my task. So, having achievable indicators is very important for strategic planning and for this last leg from evaluation to action, right? Having 100% access of all population to sustainable energy sources, wonderful thing, but you should keep in mind that we have certain limitations. Have a lake in the middle of desert Sahara is also interesting thing, but it's not so achievable. So when you put these indicators, you should think about achievability there. Relevance. And that's a very important point, because oftentimes we see indicators which are not relevant to phenomena. Attempt to measure young life chances by percentage of percent of young people unemployment could be not completely relevant, because it could be quite low if you push all them into universities. But what their lifelong chances? They spent 25 years in university coming to squeeze labor market, and they become unemployed at the age of 35. There is no young unemployment, but still we have a problem. So the question is, how relevant is this? Next is time bound, and it's also very important, because comparing Estonia 99 with Georgia 2008 make very less point. That's completely different countries and completely different times. You could do sort of comparison in historical perspective, but you should clearly understand how you link these points. For instance, you could link 2 points in time, saying, okay, let's look how industrial revolution happened in United Kingdom and in Russia. You could select two distinct points in time and try to compare how different parameters went. Yes, you could do this, but you should be clear at which point of time you do this. What is the difference between dating indicators? Well, first of all, data is basically what we are getting out of ruler and out of thermometer, and these are numbers, which are completely meaningless outside of contexts. 25%, 2,000 people are unemployed. Is it much or is it small? What happens if these 2,000 unemployed people are living in 5,000 towns? And what is it if these 2,000 unemployed people are living in 3 million countries? That's completely different things, and you should put this data in context. When you put data in context, you get indicator. And this indicator extracting it could show status or good tendency of phenomenon. And it's combination of 2 or more data sets. And in combining these data sets, you could look on relative figures relative to general population, or you could look on previous times and future times. So for instance, if you say number of unemployed increased by 10%, it's one thing. If you say unemployment rate is 15%, it's another thing. What is very important, you could use indicators to track progress or regress to certain targets. Now we're going to a little bit another view on indicators. And who of you watch movies Shrek? Okay, everybody. Good. What was desire of the Shrek?
Live peacefully.
To live happily after forever. And what we got in the beginning? We got in the beginning Shrek living lonely on his swamp, and Princess Fiona staying in her tower, and somewhere in the armory of this kingdom was helmet and sword, which Shrek could use to get the princess out of tower. What happened next? Shrek failed. No, was he happy, and could we say that he lived happily after? No, I think no, because it was kind of initial condition, and you should put together all these ingredients to achieve this goal, to live happily even after. What happened next? Shrek traveled. He took this helmet and sword, went to the tower, fight with dragon, and finally he got princess out of this tower, and they were. What we got here? We have a safe princess, and we have certain positive feeling between them. Come on. Positive feeling between them, but they still not in the situation living happily. At least living happily, not taking into account this broad even after. She is a human being, and later it turned out that she could change to ogre there. And he's ogre, and they are not so much compatible. Right? So we have part of ingredients here. We have safe princess, which was produced by ogre from swamp and applying helmet and swords to dragon. Right? But we are not yet there. Okay. What happened next? I do remember you. I think you remember all this story because he teased her, and she decided that okay, I prefer to be in ogre body, which is a little bit ugly, but I will stay with my loved one, and so on and so forth. What we have here? We have love. Yes, out of these broad positive feelings, we also got a transformation. She decided to take these roles, not to be nice Princess Fiona. And we have reproduction, all this small crowd of focus. Is it the end? No, it's not clearly the end, because yes, they're happy, they're living, But this part ever after is not coming yet, right? So we could evaluate this last part ever after only when this ever after will come. Right? What happens else? What was positive externalities of this? I'm not sure if this picture is visible, and this is dragon kissing this donkey. And the question is, what is sustainability of this last status? And movies Shrek 2 and Shrek the Third proved that actually this model could be shaken, because in Shrek 2 it was external influence of parents who tried to get rid of this ugly ogre and reverse Princess Fiona back to this human being thing. In Shrek 3, it was internal crisis of necessary to take a position in the kingdom, right? Also on all these stages, from ogre at camp to saved princess and from positive feelings to love, it was not so straightforward. It was very risks and assumptions. On the first kind of change, it was Donkey who played important role, because he joined Shrek and he fought with Dragon, and he kind of distracted Dragon at the time that Shrek saved Princess. So without this external positive factor, Shrek most probably won't save Princess. It was also a number of risks there. Do you remember these monks, brothers in the hood, who attacked them at some point in time? So it was some risks and assumptions here. Again, from second point to third, from this positive feelings to love, it was also certain risks. It was this, what was the name of the guy who asked Shrek to save the princess, right? He tried to marry this princess. Also, it was some other. So it was not exactly 100% sure transition, right? So, with all this interesting, we are coming to so-called indicators-based monitoring chain. Who knows this concept? Okay, it's coming from management. And it says, in whatever you make, it's a process. And you start with certain inputs, which could be financial, physical resources. In our case, it was Albert at Swan, Health at Armory, and business in Tower. With this, you produce certain outputs, which are goods and services you are producing, right? You simply take these inputs and produce something. So, Ogre from Swan with helmet and sword, plus Princess and Tower resulted in saved Princess. So these are intermediate indicators. We go further, and here we get to outcome. Outcome is something more serious. That's access to services, use services, or satisfaction with services. So from pure good, saved princess, and positive feelings, we go to the next stage, love, transformation, and reproduction. Okay? And impact. Impact is something broader, and it's more broad effect on different dimensions of well-being. Here we have more boring example from education system, and I think Shrek one is nicer. And these two, outcome and impact, are final indicators. Plus, we could measure sustainability of all this and certain positive externalities, like a reduction in poverty rate most probably will result also in increase of literacy, because kids who are not starving and having no clothes to go to school, they most probably will go to school, and that will impact on education. When we move on this chain from left to right, so from input through output through outcome to impact, there is a number of things. On one hand, from left to right, our interest is increasing. We are not so much interested in how much money we spend on schools. We are much interested in final impact, in literacy. Shrek was not so much interested in type of helmet he had in armory. He was much more interested in living happily after ever. However, while we're moving from left to right, we have less control, and it's much difficult for us to measure and to act here, right? So Shrek simply took this helmet and sword and go to fight for princess. But the fact that he has sword and helmet doesn't automatically mean that they will fall in love. He could die during the fight with Gregor. She could reject him. So we have less and less control about that. Next, time for achieving changes in all of these is increasing. Financial, physical resources for education are immediately available. Helmet is in armory. Sword is somewhere near there. But to get to the tower and save princess takes time. Positive feeling evolving in love is also takes time. And living happily after ever, it takes even more time. So basically, when we are talking about impulse, we are talking about 1 year framework, maybe 2 years. Outputs we could see in 1 to maybe 3 years. Outcomes comes in midterm, it's 3, 4, maybe 5 years. But impact is much more distant. Okay? So, what exactly we are measuring? Because we could measure quite different things. This Shrek's desire to live happily after ever could be measured. How it could be measured? As little said. One thing, we could measure status of phenomena. And we could look on stock, flow, input, out. Stock is what we have in hand. Flow is what is the amount is passing through our hands, right? So stock of, say, princess was 1. But flow of princess was +1 during this period, that's +0 next period. Because he is not interested in saving more princesses. Right? And you should decide on what you should look. If you look on stock of princesses saved, that's one thing. If you look on flow of princesses saved, it's a completely different thing. Because stock remains the same, but flow will be 0. Do you want to have high stock and low flow, or you want to have low stock and high flow? Flow parameters are typically, for instance, export, imports, current budget deficit, right? And stock in this case will be accumulated foreign exchange reserves, accumulated public debt. Okay. So Greece used to have certain negative flow during a long time, and as a result they got very high stock of debt. Next, we could look on sustainability of this status. How sustainable is love of Shrek and Fiona? Could Prince the Charming shape this? And actually it was a whole second series about this, about efficiency, effectiveness, and ability to sustain. Because if you resemble Shrek got princess through the long process. He fought for her, and this transformation from output to outcome, from positive feelings to love, it was a process, right? What happened that Prince Charming came, he gave her a certain portion, and she fell in love with him, and so on and so on. So it was a very straightforward, shortcut process, which proved to be unsustainable, because she decided to revert to Shrek. So the question is how you could, and actually it was two kind of comparable outputs, because Shrek saved the princess and they had positive feeling, and at certain period, at certain time, princess also had positive feelings to Prince Charming. But Prince Charming gets this status for cheating. It was very efficient way, if you want to say, because he got it quite quickly with very limited investments. But was it sustainable? No, it was not sustainable because it didn't take into account agency role of princes. She also wanted to participate in this development, right? So, for us, it's very important how the status was achieved and what is dynamics it adds. And we should think what exactly we are measuring. And when we are coming back to these complex concepts of human capital, youth inclusion, role of state in the times of austerity, we should clearly think what we are measuring. Status of phenomenon, sustainability of status, or the process how it's achieved. Okay. I like this thing, I like this cartoon when old lady is saying to young lady, can you imagine anything worse than being old and bent? And young lady asks, being young and broke. Again, when we come to this complex social phenomenon, we have to compare different, not directly comparable things. What is better? Young and broke, old and bent, Prince Charming cheating with the ocean, or Shrek fighting with the dragon? Typically, very straightforward and simple indicators in our social life that doesn't work. We need to have a look on broader picture. And to do look on broader picture, we rarely have to be absolutely sure of something. Being reasonably certain is enough. Okay? And basically, every indicator is a proxy of something. It reflects things indirectly, like our ruler with thermometer. It reflects indirectly energy, thermal energy of the gas or liquid. They are contextually linked, so you should understand what it's mean in certain contexts. And all indicators have certain advantages and disadvantages. If you start judging poverty by $1 per day, I think we had yesterday debates, or last week we had some questions. Well, but this $1 per day is not best measure. But what is the best measure? How could we improve? And here we could combine quantitative, hard statistic, and qualitative. I have here an example of poverty. Quantitative indicators of poverty could be, of course, $1 per day is very famous. But also we could look on food sharing household expenditure. Typically, the poorer household, the more money they spend on food. Okay? Because that's proven empirical evidence. But again, it's work also in certain extent. Next, the level of outstanding payments of households. Do they have debts on something? Eligibility for bank loans in certain territory. What percent of bank loans application was accepted? Again, that could be not the best indicator because it could be linked with bank desire to distribute loans to everybody and then to force people to pay. One good indicator could be usage of additional kind of advanced medical services, like dental services, because when you have very limited money, you spend them on food and basic medicine. But then you have additional money, you could call for additional services. But you could look on also qualitative indicators, and you can simply ask people, can you afford something? Can you afford meal with meat and fish at least 3 times per week if you wish so, to control for guys who are vegetarian and don't work? Do you have enough money to spend time with your friends at once a week outside of the house? So on and so forth. Where do you spend vacations? Have you enough funds to secure 1 week vacation? Okay, let's come to something practical. This guy is saying, but if we didn't measure things, we wouldn't know how good we are at measuring the things that we are measuring. Without attempt to measure, you cannot judge if you are good or bad in measuring. And this is example which is coming from our social exclusion study. We start looking at social exclusion, which is a very complex phenomenon. And we try to, first of all, we try to measure it. Second, we try to avoid this group approach. All single mothers are excluded, all disabled people are excluded, and so on and so forth. We intentionally decided not to go this way. And we go back to our drawing board and we start drawing these funny diagrams, and I think my group know that I like to draw funny diagrams. So we start with drivers of social exclusion. What are societal drivers of social exclusion, which could be structures of institutions, which could be values and behavioral patterns, right? If you don't have well-functioning labor market, possibility of your disabled person to be excluded is much higher, because there is no simply job for that. But if your labor market is more flexible, they could accommodate, right? If your values and attitude says women should stay in the kitchen and that's their role, you will have much higher level of exclusion of women from political life, because that's value, which say you should stay there. But if you have clearly different values, you believe that disabled kids should go to the same school as all other kids, you have much less exclusion of disabled kids. But these drivers should interact with social characteristics. And we look on all social individual characteristics like poor education, disability, minority status, and all the rest. We look as individual risks, which could come to social exclusion or could not come to social exclusion. And it very much depends how these drivers interact with individual characteristics and what are specific local conditions in which these people live. Right? Is it monocompany town or it's vibrant business environment? Is it what is the quality of local infrastructure and so on and so forth? And as a result, we got social exclusion status. And to measure social exclusion status, we invented social exclusion index, which tried to capture all the diversity of social exclusion phenomena in our region. So we simply put together 24 different indicators of exclusion, and we say if person have at least 9 these vulnerabilities, like having no bank account, unable to participate in cultural events, unable to buy books for kids and household. So if he accumulates at least 9 out of 24, he's excluded. And we got quite interesting results. First of all, different combination of individual risk drivers, local cortex, they bring different exclusion results. So that's was average exclusion rate for the region. But if you look on people, okay, and it's very much by type of settlement. Of course, in capital economic center, you have less exclusion. In village, you have more exclusion. But again, it's not exclusion from village life, but it's judgment on national level. Next, what happens if a person has disability? Clearly, risk of exclusion, social exclusion, increases. And these red bars are addition for disabled people. But if you start looking, you will find out that average exclusion of people with disabilities in capital and economic center is even less than exclusion of non-disabled people, right? So if you compare capital and economic center bar for people with disabilities, red bar, it's going to be a little bit smaller than average for the country. So it very much depends not only on individual characteristics, but also on context and drivers. Next, what happens? We did even more complicated kind of scenario. So, if you're a young person, low education, which means primary education only, no secondary, living in village have just one company, big company, big enterprise, which is very typical for our region. You will face very high risk of exclusion. But what happens if you will get you additional education? So we invest money and you get, instead of primary, you get secondary education. Okay, it helps a little bit, but not so much. What if you have vibrant business environment? So you're still low educated, but you have vibrant business environment, not only one company, but many employment providers in the location. Well, surprisingly enough, but maybe not so surprisingly enough, you will have much better chances. Your social exclusion will be much, much lower. What happens if you move into economic center? And clearly it's provide much more opportunities and your social exclusion will be much lower. And actually, I think it's the model we see throughout the whole region. When we have capital cities growing and the rest of countries slowly going down. That's very true for Moldova, I could judge. I'm not completely sure about the rest of the countries, but I think it's also quite true about Kyrgyzstan, Ukraine also. You could understand why it happens, right? And of course, if we do all three, educate you, have vibrant business environment, and you live economic center or capital, your chances will be much, much more. That's more. That's quite nice saying with one foot in the bucket of ice water and one foot in the bucket of boiling water. On average, it's yes.
Yeah, just can I have a comment on the previous? I think that
Yes.
you are promoting economic growth.
Sorry?
I think with the previous slide, you were saying that economic growth. I mean, you are promoting economic growth. You said if
No, not exactly. We are telling that type of economic growth is very important. If it's growth, which is concentrated in capital only, you have troubles because it provokes huge internal migration, and this huge internal migration causes a lot of turbulence. So we are talking about different opportunities, we are talking about different level of social exclusion, which depends not only who are you, but also where are you living, what are the local conditions, and what are the drivers, what are the institutions and beliefs. Okay. So a couple of examples. That's small area deprivation index we did in Moldova. More dark side means better situation, less color, lighter color is worse situation. That's a map done on the level of rhinos, territories of Moldova, which we have something like 40, 35. But if you go down to municipality level, and this map was done only for rural municipalities, you will see that even inside of the same rhion, you could have very, very different situations. So, for instance, what we had Nisporin rhion, which also very, very diverse inside of it. Okay, I think I have 2 more slides. Something like that. Another thing, how to measure social impact of migration. There are a lot of talks. Okay, migration bringing money in country, but it harms social terms. So we decided to try to measure this. And one most common complaint is that families with migrants pay less attention to their children. Children are remain without care, and that's bad. So what we did, we start looking on gender roles in families. So we ran a survey asking people, children, who is doing different things in their household. Right? So we asked them, among other things, who takes care of children in your household. And these 2 slides show you situation in distribution of answers. Yellow bars are for household without migrants. Red bars on the left slide is for migrant mother, and blue for migrant father. What you clearly see that in case of mass migration, you have huge distribution of gender roles. In something like 50% of cases, fathers start taking this role. Because in something like 50% of no-migrant case, it's shared role, mother and father. Right? When mother migrates, it falls mostly on father. Still, there are some cases where people say that the mother and father take care of children. Most probably it's related to short-term migration. When people leave just for a couple of months and then return, they're still not losing the status. They're still not losing the status. Generally, they consider it. But the last thing is much more worrying. That's people who said nobody makes it, right? So something like in 10% of cases, migration of mothers result in nobody taking care of children. If father migrates, that's left side, there is huge redistribution of this role toward mother. So it's becoming additional, very significant additional burden on them. And the question is, how sustainable is this? Of course, you could claim that, okay, there's economic opportunities is there, man is a traditional breadwinner in our society, going past economic opportunities and mother taking care of children, because it's sort of her job. But here in the picture comes very interesting things which I think happening now throughout Central Asia. It's called SMS divorce. So fathers migrate to Russia to work, and at some point of time they simply SMS, I divorce. Take care, have fun. And that's very huge negative phenomenon because of construction, of social construction in Central Asian republics. These women could not easily get yet another man. Right? So they, in fact, they're heavily marginalized and they're pushed towards very negative behavior. So looking on distribution of gender roles in migrant family help you to quantify this broad phenomenon of social impact of migration. Okay, so we are coming to fun part. That's comics I took from some PhD comics. Typically what happens, some scientists run research saying A correlates with B, providing C is true and D is not true and F is true, and it's 30% of correlation there. And after the cycle of redistribution of this news without appropriate explanation what does it mean, you will find that your grandmother is wearing this spoiled hat because of it's very dangerous. That here we are coming to possible misuse of data. Because each indicator is a message. You should say it with figures, but you could show it with charts. Charts could be very powerful. But you should avoid abusing of indicators. One could be the wrong indicator. If you start looking, well, it typically happens when you try to look on different correlations and things like that, and you could find out that increasing teacher salary could increase beer consumption, which means that they have correlations, but there is no causal. But second, it would be wrong interpretation, how you interpret things. That's we are coming to the question of 30 degrees in Sahara and 30 degrees in Antarctica, completely different. It's how that. One thing you could take, you could have serious problems in your indicators themselves. And that typically relates to the way how data are collected and the difference between survey data and administrative data. For instance, typically in our countries, in Central and Eastern European countries, unemployment data reported by unemployment offices are typically much lower than survey data. So when people are asked, do you have a job? If no, are you looking for a job and ready to start the job? So these unemployment rates registered and survey data quite different. And typically registered unemployment rate is much, much lower. But in Macedonia, and I think in Montenegro, registered unemployment rate is 2 or 3 times higher than real unemployment. Do you have any clue why it's so?
Maybe people applying to those offices saying that we don't have a job, but they working informally, like they're making money. Maybe they can get some subsidies from those offices or from the government, and they making money which they have in the envelope.
You're close enough. First, why in Eastern and Central Europe registered unemployment rate much lower than real unemployment rate is that typically in our countries we have very strict conditions to get benefit, right? You should fulfill certain condition, you should have history of employment. So to get benefits is not so easy. It's one thing, and these services are not always useful in getting job, in finding information, and you could use this your informal network much better than through this work actually. But in Macedonia and in Montenegro, they issue to all unemployed person health insurance certificate. So it's a huge incentive to go and register as unemployed, because you will not get money, but you will get this in-kind health insurance, which is a huge incentive to go. I have here one slide about wrong and right interpretation. It's coming from the World Bank and all these corruption debates. And it was shown by Daniel Kaufman, who was the person behind this World Government Syndicate. So there are a lot of talks that, okay, Central European and some Asian countries are heavily corrupt, corporations pay bribery. But he compared percentage of firms, companies which pays corporate bribery and who use what he called corporate legal corruption. So it's using different lobbyists, finding their through legislation. And black bar is for United States. So you clearly see that they quite rarely use corporate bribery, but they heavily use legal corruption. And when you analyze certain phenomenon, you should clearly understand what exactly you are measuring. If you are measuring just partially, you could not get there. Prince Charming had positive feelings towards Fiona, but have they lived happily even after? No. Why? Because she had positive feelings towards Shrek, not his Prince Charming. So think about this. Okay, so I did a lot of talking, so now it's your turn. We will do group work. You have all 3 groups, and you're already working on certain indicators, certain things, so it will be easy and useful for you. First, discuss in groups and select one issue you try to measure, one phenomenon, and discuss it in this phenomenon measurement evaluation action framework. What and how to measure. If you are talking about social capital, what and how we plan to measure, and why to measure. Do we need more social capital in this country? Do we need less social capital in the country? What we plan to do with this? Next, be smart. Okay, generally smart and apply this simple, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Third point is not 1001 nights. That's input, output, outcome, impact. Right, which you also should think about when you put down this unit. After 30 minutes, we will get together and we run a presentation of each group to present their findings and we will discuss. Okay? So now you have 30 minutes to break in groups and we will.